Toxic jobs, trauma, and Black women healing from workplace mobbing. Workplace mobbing. So, we're going to be talking about, I've talked about workplace bullying, and I've had Dr. Leah Hollis on before talking about workplace bullying, but we're going to be talking about workplace mobbing. You may not have heard of that, but you may be experiencing it. So, we're going to have a more, I don't know, a scholarly discussion because Dr. Hollis is an expert in the field of studying bullying. So we're going to be talking about this today, and some of this might resonate with you in relation to workplace bullying. I also want to just acknowledge that we are living in a very challenging time right now. When I came on and Dr. Lee and I were just talking, I was like, I said, "How you doing?" And we just looked at each other because these are some really challenging times. And so I do want to acknowledge that we are living in a very I don't even know how to describe it, but very disturbing time. And so it's very important for us as Black women to stay informed about what's happening, rest when we need to rest, but let us not fall into the trap of oppression, which is to distract us, exhaust us, and make us feel helpless and hopeless. Okay. So we're going to share information with you in the hopes that you can identify with it and maybe find out what to do if you are experiencing workplace bullying. Not workplace mobbing too, okay? So if you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Kamani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist of over 20 years. I'm also a toxic job survivor and a toxic job liberator for Black women. So today I'm so excited to have Dr. Leah Hollis again with us today. So Dr. Hollis, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leah Hollis. I'm the president and founder of my consulting group, Patricia Berkeley LLC. If you Google that name, you'll find me. Also, I'm currently serving as Associate Dean at Penn State University College of Education.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Leah. So let's get into it. What is workplace mobbing? Again, we know about workplace bullying. You've been on, we've talked about that before, but what is workplace mobbing?
Well, let me say that bullying and mobbing can sometimes be used interchangeably in the European context. But the way I use mobbing, it's when you have two or more bullies coming at you. That's like a mob.
Okay.
And I've written about that and have found that Black women are more likely to be mobbed compared to their counterparts. So this show's very timely given everything that's going on. But
Truly. And when you say two or more bullies coming at you, do we mean like people actively doing things? Or are we also talking about people who are complicit? They're observing, they know what's happening to us, but they're not stopping it.
The latter would be witnesses and bystanders. Witnesses and bystanders can interrupt the bullying. However, they kind of do stuff at their own risk because the bully then trains themselves on the bystander. When I say mobbing, I'm saying two or more people actively, deceiving you or taking your resources, calling you bad name. Is kind of like Mean Girls in the playground, like we see in the movies. It's a group of people who are actively working against.
Yes. It's so interesting. Actually, my client brought it to my attention about workplace mobbing, which I'd never heard of before. Why do you think that doesn't get much attention, workplace mobbing?
Well, it's tough. First of all, mobbing and bullying are still legal in the US. However, if let's suppose you engage in a protected activity, you stand up for yourself because of your race, your gender, your age, your ableism, what have you, and then you face bullying, well, then the bullying falls into the retaliatory stuff. And so it doesn't get reported because a lot of times institutions think it's a personality conflict. Oh, they're just picking on the quirky person. Another thing, and I'm working on a study right now at the provost level, which is where the power is at. Sometimes they don't know, and sometimes they don't care.
Oh,
yeah, they just said it's not a priority for us. So
wait. So in the workplace, these are their employees. They know that negative things are happening to this person and they don't care. Can you elaborate on why they don't care? Why they may not care?
Because it's still legal.
Wow.
So it becomes an issue. For example, about 10 years ago, Duke University got nailed for coercion in the lab. They had to pay back $112 million.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. People started talking about bullying then. But when
Mm.
it costs you money or if it damages your reputation, then the
Mm.
institution will step in. But also, institutions are still learning like how damaging is that. In some schools that have had major scandals, you
Mhm.
recognize that the power differential is at the root of somebody not moving forward with a complaint. However,
Mm.
in other schools that haven't had those kinds of issues, they're like, oh, it's just a personality conflict. Oh, that's just how so and so is. And they let it go.
That part, yes. I've
Mhm.
heard that so much. That's just how they are. Everybody, and the thing about it, everybody in the system knows about these
Yes.
people and they're
Yes.
allowed to continue. But what I heard you say is if there's not a legal consequence or a reputation kind of thing, they'll allow it to continue, even if it really disrupts or undermines the employee morale, the culture. There's not really.
So that's where collective voice is really important. So if
Hmm.
one person is being mobbed by three other people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only that one person who's stepping up and saying, "Hey, this environment is toxic."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that yeah, it's a personality problem. But if you have a group of people who come
Mm-hmm.
forward, I'm a big fan of collective action. I mean, we saw it in the civil rights movement, we see it with
Mhm,
unionization. When you have a group of people come forward and say, "This isn't working,"
mhm,
like the vote of no confidence.
mhm,
Those kinds of things, if people are working together,
mhm,
you can move the needle because the institution has a group coming through, a group of faculty or the union saying, you got to do something with this person. And I
mm,
have seen another school that I had worked with, they brought in a new dean.
mhm.
The dean was unsavory, I'll just put it that way.
Okay.
And the faculty got together, so, oh no, we don't care where this guy came from or how fussy his credentials are. We as a faculty want him out of here. And within
Mm.
18 months, they had their dean removed.
Wow.
So it can be done, but when you have a choir of voices come forward,
Yeah,
more likely to be successful.
got it, got it. Now, why do you think that workplace mobbing, Black women are more at risk? Well, let's talk about this. Why do you think Black women are more at risk from workplace mobbing? One, and then two, why do you think during this time, particularly, that Black women are more at risk for workplace mobbing?
Whew. Well, much like why Black women are more at risk for bullying, it's the power differential. Now,
Mm,
especially if you're working in a predominantly white environment, and so you're
mhm,
the different person, the raisin in the milk, if you will. So it's easier for a couple of different women to get together and pick on the one who stands out, the one of color, etc.
mhm,
Why Black women would be more susceptible in this environment? I had actually said this last year at a function here at Penn State when you have resources that are challenged,
mhm,
status quo is challenged,
mhm.
people are nervous about losing their position, they
Mhm.
tend to amp up their aggression. It's almost a survival of the fittest thing.
Right.
So I would suspect that under this new administration out of Washington, D.C., 47,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Everybody's on edge.
Right.
People's budgets are being slashed. Also, we may not work in the federal government, but we typically all have friends or colleagues or somebody who we know whose job is at risk or they have been cut. And those kinds of things make people anxious and nervous.
Mhm. Mhm.
And therefore, bad behavior is more susceptible. So let's say it's a two-part thing for this environment.
Mhm.
First of all, if you're different, and it could be a Latin American woman, it could be an Asian American woman, but a group of people who have
Mhm.
a common interest or a common thing to protect,
Mhm.
then target a single person. And in this
Mm.
environment, it can be worse because
Mhm.
everybody is strung out on all this stress and what's going on with all these executive orders. I mean, it's kind
Mhm.
of
The
crazy.
exhaustion of it. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what I'm curious about when you were talking, I had another thought. So with workplace mobbing, particularly for Black women, is that also a control tactic to keep other people in the workplace in place, right, in check? So, like the Black woman is made example of, and I don't know what happened with Joy Reid. I don't know what happened exactly with Joy Reid, but to me, it just seems like Black women in high profile positions
Mm-hmm.
taken down abruptly, right? Like the kind of humiliation, like
Mm-hmm.
you get into out of your place, you're making people too uncomfortable. And it's kind of like making an example out of us. How does that factor into workplace mobbing? And again, I don't know what happened with Joy Reid, but I'm just saying, as an outsider looking in, it kind of has that flavor.
Sure. I mean, even if we look at what happened with Dr. Claudine Gay up at Harvard,
Right, right.
um, I hate to use the phrase, but if you get a little too close to the sun, if you're familiar with that Greek myth, you fly really close to the sun and someone's going to melt your wings and you tumble to the earth.
Oh,
So unfortunately, when you're high profile, like Claudine Gay, like Ms. Reid, then there was always somebody in the background who was hating. There was always something. How did she get it? How did that happen? But in this environment, those haters can get traction because the biggest haters are in the White House. So all I'm saying is that
wait, can you repeat that?
the biggest haters are in the White House.
Yes.
So now that you know, like, hater in chief is going to support you,
yes,
then I could do what I want.
right.
But under Biden, under President Obama, those folks, we got to tread lightly because the environment at that time was we're going to try at least to respect people. But, when Trump got in the first time, I think the Southern Law Poverty Institute, I'm mixing up the title, the explosion of hate crimes was out of the roof. I mean, by like 100-fold. So all of a sudden, the country has permission,
right,
to act like
those aspects are already there, right? It wasn't like out of the blue, but now they have permission by the larger society that this is okay.
Yep.
Okay. So if there's a Black woman watching and she might be thinking, I don't know, is this workplace mobbing? Is it not? What are the red flags of workplace mobbing?
If you Google the phrase negative short acts questionnaire, there is a questionnaire that has 22 different behaviors. And if you check more than 2 of them, you're being bullied.
It's negative short acts.
Short negative acts questionnaire. It's called the SNAC. It was developed at the University of Bergen. I use it quite often in my surveys. And it has things in there like, you've been teased about your background. You've been the subject of gossip. Somebody has reduced your job duties to something humiliating. You've been asked to do menial stuff. You've been yelled at, insulted. Your job has been threatened. There's a list.
Oh my God, that was me.
There's a list of things. Given unreasonable tasks, given unreasonable deadlines, having your work managed minute by minute. So if there's 2 of those that happen regularly, yeah, you're being bullied. And your system knows. I mean, when you're being bullied because the bully walks by and you're like, I want to go the other direction.
Right.
I'm going to walk the long way around the building and go to the bathroom. You know what? I'm going to take all my meetings out of my office. I'm going to do just about anything not to be in contact with that person. If you're already behaving like that to stay away from somebody, you're probably being bullied.
Yeah.
But your system's like, we're not built for stress. I mean, we're built for adrenaline, to participate in sport or physical activity, or, things do happen in life that you have a response to stress, but to have a constant, sustained level of stress, that's where high blood pressure comes in, the diabetes comes in, the blurred vision, the headaches,
the weight gain.
Your body's telling you, yo, I'm being bullied. So pay attention to your body.
Yeah. So for a Black woman to distinguish bullying and mobbing, what you're saying is if there's 2 or more people who are actively engaged in the behavior, then more than likely that is workplace mobbing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so can we talk a little bit more about the physical, emotional impact of workplace mobbing, particularly on Black women? We talked a little bit about it. Can we go more in depth on it, please?
Well, the tough part about mobbing, you're not just worrying about one person. You've now got to figure out how to navigate 3 people. And, I had a colleague of mine say, he called it next man up. So one person's done messing with your travel funds and took your GA. Okay. And then the next person takes your course assignment or schedules you to 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night. And then the next person, they lost your dossier or whatever. Then you go back to the first person, and then they're busy messing around with, it's just constant obstructions, but
Yeah.
different people are doing it. And
Yeah.
you don't have to physically be in their space. They could do stuff online.
Mm-hmm.
They,
Oh.
they can do stuff. In the cyber world, after COVID, so many of us are on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So someone gives you the wrong link to the meeting. Somebody throws the microaggressions at you when you've had an accreditor come in. Somebody undercuts you. It's like, see that mistake you made, and the whole group is watching. You feel it because it's like whoo, I just took a hit.
Yeah.
And if it keeps coming, yeah, I understand people have a bad day and they get snarky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I forgive you having a snarky day. I
Mm-hmm.
don't forgive you for having 3 snarky days in a row.
Right. Right. And forgetting to send me information, or forgetting or accidentally doing these things. So the thing about it too, because I know you've done a lot of research just about overall bullying. What are some of the long-term implications for particularly Black women who've experienced workplace bullying or workplace mobbing?
Well, there's this wonderful book. It's Nancy Krieger, I think I have the name right, who wrote about eco-social theory. Her theory, and she studied Black women who were born in the Jim Crow South
Mm-hmm.
and Black women who were born in the North.
Mm-hmm.
Those born in the Jim Crow South and raised in the Jim Crow South were more likely to have breast cancer because the stress activates an estrogen receptor. And this is her work. This is Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy's work. She's an epidemiologist out of Harvard, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
butchering up her name, but I use her work all the time, that stress is a killer.
Yeah.
I've had a colleague who also had the same kinds of health problems because of the stress.
Mm-hmm.
So we as Black women already are dealing with gendered racism or misogyny, right? And so you add bullying on top of it. So all of those stress-related health issues are more prevalent, whether it's the migraines. In
Mm-hmm.
my work, I've also seen people say grand mal seizures, miscarriage,
Mm.
irregular cycles, panic attacks, anxiety issues,
Mm-hmm.
insomnia, weight gain, high blood
Depression,
pressure, depression,
PTSD.
all of those things. And then
Yeah.
the medicines that you take for them, Xanax, you take it too long, coming off of it, you have seizures.
Right. Right.
Lexapro, it causes suicidal ideation if you change
Mm-hmm.
the dosage.
Mm-hmm.
So while these medicines have an initial relief,
Mm-hmm.
long-term use can also cause problems. And then people do, how should I say it, the original drug, which is alcohol. We have one on
Mm-hmm.
every corner. In Pennsylvania, it's the wine and spirit store. But
Mm-hmm.
alcohol is a legal drug that can literally take you out of your mind. And yeah,
Yeah.
you feel good when you got a nice buzz, but the
Yeah.
next morning you have a hangover and the problem is still there.
Yeah. So it's a numbing effect. So you're self-medicating, not getting at the root of the problem. So then you have to continue to engage in that problem because the problem it's not solved, right? Right. And so when we think about these different experiences for Black women, and you've talked about just a range of different things can happen to us, what happens to us, or why do you think for us as many Black women, we can acknowledge that we're having these experiences in the workplace, right? I recently was at this convention for Black women insurance agents, brilliant Black women, brilliant. And so many of them talked about being in very toxic work environments, right? But trying to find ways to cope in that environment, not saying, okay, what are my options? And maybe I need to go somewhere else. It was, I need to stay in this work environment, particularly if I'm in leadership position. Why do you think for many of us as Black women, that when we get jobs like this, that we might be experiencing workplace bullying, workplace mobbing, all these things? Why? And we know that we're miserable. We know that we're having the Sunday scaries. We know we're having all these symptoms. What are some of the issues that keep us in these jobs?
Sure. Well, first, it's like perhaps commitment to family. You have your financial support for your family revolving around this particular leadership position.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as we get older, we have parents who need more care. If you have kids, so now you're part of the sandwich generation, and falling back out of a leadership position may cut your financial ability to support the people you love. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, the job longevity piece is an issue. So it's nothing like you've been in a job for 2 years and then another job for 2 years, another job for 2 years. Then finally people are going to start asking, like, why are you 1 and 2 years and out? That's not a good look either. So sometimes you stay for longevity purposes. Another reason people stay is, well, how hard was it for me to get this position? If I step back, then I can't get another one. And regardless of race, white, black, green, purple, blue, yellow, doesn't matter. If you're in a leadership position and you step back, your path to the next leadership position will be longer. It's easy to go, say, from associate provost to associate provost. But if you're an associate provost and then you step back to faculty, what are the chances your next job is going to be associate provost? You've now changed your career trajectory by stepping back. So that's another reason why people stay. And I will say, and I'm learning this the hard way myself in general, you know, these jobs are not meant for us to be in forever, ever. You're not, you know, a provost lasts 4 years. A U.S. University president lasts maybe 5 years. A dean lasts 5 years. That's average. But we often think, I need to be in the leadership position. Instead of thinking, is this leadership position feeding my soul?
Or is it killing my soul? Right? Yeah.
So let's suppose you had a great hobby where you liked, well, let me think. You're into painting. But because you became the associate provost, you don't have time to paint anymore. And that painting might have been your joy, but you've got to give up that joy for that leadership position. Or let's suppose you took these fantastic vacations with your family and you were into hiking and all sorts of stuff, but now that your butt is sitting behind a desk all the time, you're not in shape like you used to be. You can't do the hikes like you used to, but you have this leadership position, but you gave up your joy to get it. So sometimes I would also say, you know, we only walk through this life once. And it's great to have leadership positions. I think more Black and brown people need to have leadership positions, because when you have diversity in your leadership, you have a more solid foundation from which to move and to make decisions. I mean, it's not just because you are of color. It is because the diversity of experiences that come when you have a leadership group that has so many different people. But how are you sustaining yourself? Because if you're dead pushing up daisies, you can't help anybody. You can't help yourself. You can't help the people you were leading, and your family will miss you the most.
True. And something I've heard from Black women in leadership positions is this notion that, like, I'm the only leader there that's compassionate to the people I'm leading. And, you know, I have to kind of down the sword, you know, to protect the team and all that. And that notion that you just said, well, nobody's going to be okay if you're no longer here. Do you think that as Black women that we're more, I guess, at risk for that type of mentality of like saving other people and self-sacrificing to the extent, don't worry about us, but I want to make sure everybody's okay?
Yeah, I think that happens. And I think that happens to a detriment. If you're so busy taking care of everybody else, well, who's taking care of you?
True.
And so often, I mean, we've seen our mothers do it. And, you know, literally my mom walked uphill both ways in the snow and on our street was up and down. So it really was up both ways to bring a permission slip so I could play the clarinet. My mom did that. Other things, my brother forgot his lunch. She was racing back to make sure he got his lunch. We've seen our mothers care for us and for others like that. And so sometimes we take on, I've got to take care of everybody else. And if you can do it, that's fine. But one of the things I'm really thrilled to see is I'm seeing phrases like the rest revolution.
That's right. Rest is resistance.
That's right. Rest is resistance. The napping ministry, those kinds of things. That is a reminder we have to get our sleep.
Yeah.
We have to eat healthy. Because when you're on the run, It's really hard. Okay, I'm going to grab a slice here. I'm going to grab a donut
Mhm.
here. I'm going to stop at Dunkin', I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab a hamburger. All of those things are carb, 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 sugar, sugar, sugar,
Mhm.
carb, carb, carb. Oh, I'm going to grab a juice. So I'm going to grab all that stuff. And
Mhm.
it's tough. Our society in general doesn't support healthy eating.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
hamburgers
And
and french fries everywhere, but
yes. And when you look at the mix, when you were talking like the high stress level, so ongoing stress, not only from the job, but other life events and
Mhm.
racism, sexism, and all the nonsense going on in the world, and then unhealthy eating, and then maybe not sleeping as well, all these things are contributing to our detriment that
Yes.
we need to really prioritize our own health. So if a Black woman is experiencing workplace mobbing, what are some steps that you think would be helpful for her?
Tell it. Here's why I say that. So often, human beings, and I think women in general, have
Mhm.
a reflex of shame. If
Mm.
you were assaulted, if you were beat up, it's her fault. It's because of what she wore. The gaslighting starts
Yep.
when something happens, and that's unfair.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this reflex of shame that I did something wrong to deserve this. That's not true.
Mm.
So if you tell your family, you tell your colleagues, you tell your friends, you tell acquaintances, because when it's time for you to get another job, or let's suppose you fall back from your career altogether and become an entrepreneur, you decide to do something on your own. Well, now people understand what you've gone through. If
Mm-hmm.
they know somebody, so I was horribly bullied at my last job.
Mm-hmm.
And I told folks, and I had folks saying, hey, do you want to join this grant? Hey, do you want to look into this other project? Hey, I have this resource for you. You know what? I really understand. I can give you a pass. You don't have to come to this meeting. People will reach out. How are you doing? How are you feeling? But if I kept it all to myself, they're just like, what's wrong with her? She's
Mm-hmm.
like acting out because I'm stressed out. So I told
Yeah.
my husband, I told my mom, I told my cousins, I told my colleagues. And what
Mm-hmm.
was interesting when I got this job here at Penn State, I
Mm-hmm.
sent, I sent out 30 pairs of gratitude socks.
Aw.
Makes sense because I believe in saying thank you and celebrating the people who celebrate you. And once
Yes.
I signed it and had a start date, I sure did. I got 30 pairs of socks and sent them to all the people. You see, 30 who had been in there some way to say, I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
And
And
there
so
were others.
that was your support circle to kind of mitigate the toxicity that you were experiencing. And we all need that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I'm curious. So it sounds like your family was supportive, right? What about your coworkers? So did they know what was happening to
Oh,
you?
yeah. They knew.
Okay. And how did they, or what did they advise of you to do in that situation?
Um, in that situation, unfortunately, there was a woman before me who was just, they ground her into a powder. They forced her out, and it was really a shame because she was a wonderful scholar, very intelligent, just a groundbreaking scholar, and they took her out.
Wow.
So by the time she retired, she was so demoralized, and I that was a shame because she really was a great scholar and a great personality.
Wow.
So we saw that happen. And I
So
was
you
in
guys
my
are bearing witness to that.
I was witness to that.
Oh my
And when
God.
that happened, I was like, "Oh my god, is that how y'all do people here?"
Oh.
And so there was palpable fear in that department.
Uh-huh.
There was one person who stood up for me. And what's a shame for that, and we are still friends now,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
he was a lecturer and they fired him.
What?
He jumped up and said, I'm protesting the gender discrimination against Leah and the other person. 3 days later, they ended his contract.
Oh.
Now,
Okay.
he was in a position where he had already retired. His
Mm-hmm.
wife had already retired. He was doing
Mm-hmm.
this because he loved to do it. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a big hit for him financially. But
Mm.
once that happens, you want to talk about chill the environment. Nobody's speaking up for anything.
They're terrified. Yes, because their
They're
livelihood is at stake. Right. So, the part about people standing up, and sometimes when we're in these workplaces, we know our colleagues are saying. I knew my colleagues knew what was happening to me, but the majority of them did not say anything. They were silent because they knew about retaliation because they saw what was happening to
Right.
me. But sometimes you do have those people who do support you. So I do have compassion for them because I know that they were fearful of that. But I can't be in contact with them. Like I can't, you know what I'm saying? Like you weren't there for me when I was struggling. So don't circle back around now. Right. So, but I do have grace for them. So why do you think that you were targeted? Why do you think that the other woman you mentioned were targeted? Why? The why?
The two of us were the most productive scholars in our program. So she had written several books. She had a national profile. She won great awards. And after a couple years, once I get my sea legs, as you will, as a faculty member, I'm doing the same thing. I'm publishing books. I am doing lectures off campus. People are inviting me to do stuff. I have a profile, and we suspect that this woman was jealous. Also, part of the issue was our university, and it still is. I still get emails from that university. I don't want to name it, but the pay issue was a big deal. Notorious for underpaying the women as in a salary database for that state. So I spoke up about that too. It's like, why are you paying me so much less?
Whoa, wait. I've not interviewed you before, but it just not connected with me. So the woman, the main person who was engaged in the workplace bullying, she was aware of this pay inequity for women, and she's a woman.
Yes.
Wow.
And she's the one who sets the salaries.
That's a mess.
She knew exactly what she was doing.
You talk about internalized oppression. Oh my gosh. So the jealousy part, right? So that's the part I think that trips a lot of us up, particularly logical people. And so we think, wait a minute, I'm doing all these great things. I'm going up and above. I'm bringing positive attention to the organization. Why is this happening to me? And I think a lot of us get tripped up with that, right? But the issue of jealousy, I think sometimes we don't want to believe it. Like we want to believe that we're all on the same team, that we're all working for the same cause, but people's jealousy will overshadow.
Oh, yeah.
They don't care.
And what you're talking about is a phrase called, and this is Jennifer Fried's phrase, betrayal blindness.
Ooh, betrayal blindness.
Betrayal blindness.
Elaborate.
We don't want to see it. So you have a relationship with this employer. They're paying you, I don't know, $75K. Now, granted, they're paying the other guy $100K, but you're still getting your $75K. And you don't really want to come to terms with, wait a minute, this is gender discrimination. Right. Because now you either have put yourself on notice that you have to leave, put yourself on notice that you have to fight,
yes,
or convince yourself that it's okay to accept less. It's sort of the same thing. Let's suppose you have a partner and a spouse, what have you, and you suspect your spouse is cheating. But if you blow up your spouse, oh, wait a minute, now that salary is gone. Maybe your children's father or the other parent is leaving. So I'm going to turn a blind eye to that betrayal because the consequences of calling out that betrayal, I don't want to lose.
Yeah, I'm fearful of what the consequences are. So how do you, because I'm wondering, like, what do you say to yourself to do that? Right? Because sometimes people turn the blind eye, but then they start beating themselves up, right? They start thinking like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Or depression, what happens to us? What's the cost to us?
The cost to accepting the institutional betrayal. Some people do what's called blunting. I'm not going to feel it. I don't care. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to blunt my feelings.
Oh,
that's not exactly a cool thing to do.
No.
But you become numb.
Oof.
The other thing people do is they figure out, okay, I see this mess is happening. So tell you what, I'm going to go get my master's degree while my husband's running around. And when I'm done with the master's degree, now I can support myself. and they might have a long pathway out of it.
Okay.
Sometimes they're going to speak up right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to take the risk
Yeah.
because I just got called by 3 headhunters. I know I'll find another job. I know I have tenure, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So people have to come to terms with how much fighting are you willing to do?
Mm-hmm.
What can you risk?
Mm-hmm.
In my situation, my last employer put me in a position where I literally thought if I don't fight them, I will lose my house.
What? Oh my gosh.
Because the original issue with the unequal pay also revolved around an unfair tenure decision, which I prevailed. But at the time, I was like, if I sit here and do nothing, I will lose my house.
Wow.
And that's what made me say, you can't wait anymore.
Yeah. 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 So what distinguishes, let's say, the Black woman who says, who's like you, who's like me, who's like, no, we're not doing this. I'm fighting, and I'm going somewhere else. I'm taking my goodies somewhere else that appreciates me. What distinguishes that Black woman from the Black woman who says, this job is everything to me. I can't leave this job because it'll fall apart if I leave. This is the only place where I can make money. Like, what distinguishes?
I would say circumstance. For me, for example, part of it is like, if I do nothing, you're going to take my house. That was enough. For other people, I've heard people stay in jobs. I'm talking education.
Mm-hmm.
My son is in his sophomore year. I've got to stay here long enough for him to get the tuition remission. Or my spouse or my partner is sick and we need the health benefits. It also could be we're just tired. God forbid you had a bout with your last employer, or you had a parent or a child or your partner who was sick, like a long-term illness, and you just don't have the energy. Say, oh my God, we just got through chemo.
Yeah.
I don't have the energy to go in and fight this.
Yeah. So the exhaustion.
I just dealt with my child who I finally got them extricated from the juvenile system. I don't have the energy to fight this. So I think a lot of times it's circumstances and assessing how much energy you have to mount up a good fight. And sometimes, everybody doesn't support your fight either.
True.
Some people are like, girl, why are you doing that? You should be home doing this. You should be back at church more. Why are you going in there fighting? Blah, 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 blah. And so
you must have this good job.
Yeah. Some people just like, they're paying you well.
Yeah.
Looking at it is like, but they're paying the white cat like $50K more.
Right.
Your friends are looking at it. Your family, your friends can certainly influence you and say they don't support you.
Right.
I've seen, this is interesting. It's kind of a bit off the topic, but the same kind of idea. I recently saw a video on the Clery Act about the young woman at Lehigh who was assaulted. And at that time, this was in the 80s, universities were not telling about the safety. And it's the Clery Act. So if you're in higher education, it's called the Clery Act. You've got to report safety issues. And in the interview, her mom said, we had to fight. We had to fight because we didn't want this to happen to anybody else's daughter.
Can you tell us, because I'm not familiar with it. So what happened in that situation?
There was a young woman who went to Lehigh University. They thought it was in the 80s, I believe, the early or mid 80s. And on her first year there, I believe, she comes back to her dorm and she leaves her door unlocked for her roommate to come in.
Okay.
Instead, somebody enters who assaults her and kills her in her room.
Wow.
And apparently they knew this kind of person was on campus.
What?
But at the time in the 80s, remember, we're going back to the 80s, colleges and universities were not required to put out these safety reports. And so the Clery family took on the establishment. And that's why we now have the Clery Act. You must report when a sexual assault, criminal activity, car was broken into, you must report that. So families and young people on campus can make smart decisions about their environment. And it's because of the Clerys.
Oh my
God. What she admitted in that fight, we lost so many friends. So many people did not support us fighting for this, but
What?
I just really,
Wow.
people don't want controversy. You don't want to be associated with somebody who's suing or who's whatever. And I've seen people do that. You
Mhm.
jump out there and you find all of a sudden, yeah, they have your back, but way back. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, your
Way
bestie,
back. Yeah.
way back, your bestie is not returning your calls or
Uh-huh.
not getting back to you. And that's the unfortunate fallout that can happen, which is why you
Mhm.
need to know in yourself,
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. And these are the people who support me. And
Yeah.
I'm going to go, even if it's two people,
Mhm. Mhm.
two good people can help
Mhm.
you through.
Yeah, yeah. So knowing who those people are and be mindful of who may not have your back. So if they're discouraging you, then have boundaries about maybe don't tell those
Right,
people those things
right,
because they're going to discourage you, but you need to find your circle. And that's
right.
what's so important to find your circle. So I was thinking also when you talked about why maybe some Black women may not say things, we talked about the financial, we talked about life circumstances, and it feels like that contributes to like sense of that learned helplessness. So nothing I'm going to do is going to make it better. So let me just stick it out and just try to
I've
make
seen
it.
that. Oh, it'll never change. Oh,
Yes.
City Hall doesn't change. Oh, no, they'll never listen to me.
Yes.
But if we took that on, we wouldn't be in this historical space claiming they have rolled back DEI. We instead would be saying we never got it in the first place.
Mm.
So, yeah, City Hall can change.
Yeah. So systems can, I think it's several things. Systems can change, I think, with collective action, and you're saying speaking
Yes,
out.
yes,
Also, there may be times where we have an expiration date at a job. So we might be at a job, but knowing that if a job is harming us, we can pivot out silently. We plan and strategize and exit plan in silence like Harriet, and we can exit out. So there's other ways to effect change. It may not be that you're there for the whole time to
right.
see the change, because if you recognize I'm trying to do these things, but I'm being harmed too, the priority is or has to be ourselves. It has to be.
Yeah,
The other thing I want to say is I've heard Black women talk about they're in leadership positions and people that they're supervising are actually bullying them.
yeah,
Can you speak to that?
yeah. It's called upward bullying. It happens more likely to happen if the supervisor is not in a union and the subordinates are in a union and they're misusing their union power. But
Mm,
remember, bullying is based on a power differential: expert
right.
power, reverent power, social power. So let's
Mm-hmm.
suppose you're new to your unit and you're the new supervisor,
Mm-hmm.
but all the people who've been working there for 10, 15, 20 years, they're tight. So they all come together and they are mobbing you upward because they're mad you changed
That's
this or they're
crazy.
mad about that. Yeah, they'll do that because you're changing stuff.
Right.
You see it most often, like a new person comes in and then the budget fell apart, which is an institutional thing. But then
Mhm.
people blame the new leader because the budget model changed. But the budget was a problem before. This just happens to be the person who has to carry out the change. People
Mhm.
get mad at that. People get mad about changes.
Yes.
So I've seen that happen.
And what's crazy too, Dr. Hollis, is that many times, I think they call it the glass cliff or something like that, Black women are brought into very impossible situations, often failing situations to fix the problem. We come in and we do a great job, but then we're labeled as the problem
Right.
because changes need to happen.
Right.
It's like a setup.
It's a setup. And there's an article, I'd have to look up the reference, I can send it to you, is
Mhm.
that minoritized groups are more likely to be hired into high level positions when there's a mess.
Oh,
And there is an empirical article out there, you're more likely to get it if it's a messy situation.
wow.
Yeah. Everything that glitters ain't gold. It could be a mess in there. You open the hood and you're like, oh my God, where's the carburetor? Oh my
Right.
God, you didn't
Right.
put oil in the car for the last 2 years and I'm supposed to drive this.
Oh my
So
gosh.
they know
Yes.
it's you.
So you're coming in a disaster, basically, right? Okay. My friend Dr. Monica Cox says, like, you're being brought in to be slaughtered, basically.
Mhm.
They're setting you up for being slaughtered. Okay. So what happens when Black women, let's say, are brought in leadership position into some disastrous organization or something needs to be fixed, right? So she comes in, she's experiencing bullying upward. How does the system generally respond? So her manager or those in higher power, how do they generally respond to the Black woman if she's experiencing the bullying upward?
It depends. I mean, one thing, if you get there and realize, oh, wait a minute, I was just invited into this burning house, take notes. Take notes on where was the budget at when you got there. Take notes of how many open positions you had when you got there. Take notes, and then perhaps a month in, sit down with your supervisor and say, I noticed these 5 deficiencies. I just want you to know they were here before we got here. Send an email too.
Good point.
Keep a record. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm happy to work on these things. But I'm going to need your help with this, and something over here, because I was told X, Y, and Z, and it's just X. The Y and the Z are gone, or they're different letters or numbers, or it's something I never imagined. And so be upfront with them and say, hey, this is not, I'm here to do a good job, but I want to be clear on what job you've given me. And so I have your support in making those changes.
Okay.
And then
okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, and then you're left with, okay, if they say no, they're not going to help you. Now you're left with the decision: how long do you want to stay there, and what can you change, and what can't you change?
Good point.
I was at a conference, and I just really enjoyed the presenter who says, things that come across your desk have 3 buckets. First bucket, you can't change it. Don't even try.
Okay. Okay.
You're not changing that one. Like, everybody should get 10% raises. You're not changing that. There are other things you can improve on a scale of 1 to 10. Maybe you inherited a situation and it was at a 3, and you can move it to a 7. You've made an improvement, and then get it off your desk. And the third bucket is something you can absolutely change. Yeah, I can change how we do whatever, the punch clock, or I can change this particular policy. So to choose, figure out which of those 3 buckets it goes into, and figure out what you can change and what you can't, what you can improve. And there's other things you're never going to change, like your boss's personality.
Nepotism in the workplace.
Not going to change that.
Yeah.
And if that's okay with you, fine. If you can't change that and it is a deal breaker, well, then strategize and find your pathway through. So, but recognize what you can and you cannot change.
Do you find that when Black women are experiencing the bullying upward, in all your research, have you found that generally they do get organizational support, or they're kind of left on their own? And I see somebody in the comment, yes, you're like the sacrificial scapegoat, right? Yeah. So they put it all on, oh, it's because so-and-so came in. She changed everything.
It depends. So, for example, I'm familiar with, a few years ago, a colleague who took a job and the budget was cut just as they were coming in. And so the subordinates were bullying upwards because they were mad about the budget cut. You report that. There's nothing you can do. You give the folks the information. You explain to them what's going on. I also had another colleague who saw the budget cut and says, okay, we just got a 15% budget cut. Here's what the budget is. You all figure out how you're going to figure this out. Empower them, give them agency to make the changes. That's another way of diffusing that, depending on what it is. If these are just mean-spirited, insecure people, I had another colleague recognize this gentleman. He broke up the clique. There were like 6 people. They were rolling together. He was in a division. And so he put one over here and one over there and moved somebody else.
That's brilliant.
He broke that up. And that really dampened their ability to mob.
Yeah. Because so many times these workplaces, because I felt like when I was at this hot job, I felt like I was back in high school. I was like, oh my God, it feels like just like high school, like Mean Girls, high school, that petty behavior. And I think it's hard for many of us to believe that people are so immature. And in fact, one of my friends, Colette Elizabeth, says, watch out for situations when you're in a workplace where people in supervisory positions are incompetent, insecure, immature, right? And so I was like, OMG, that is exactly That is exactly what's happening. And I just want to say to Black women watching this, if you see those 3 qualities in people you work with, you need to watch out. What are your thoughts about that, her assessment about that?
I would agree, because if you're incompetent or insecure, I mean, you know what you're insecure about.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody can, depending on how they're wired, they become a bully because they're trying to cover their insecurity. They're trying to smooth over the fact that they don't know, or they made a huge mistake.
Yes.
Some of the best leaders I've worked with, I made some crazy mistake when I was working. This is like 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. I felt so bad. And my boss came to me and said, "It's over. Next." I mean, I made the mistake and we moved on. I was harder on myself than my boss.
Okay.
And that lesson was life, life goes on. It's not like I burned down the school.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I blew $1 million. Mm-hmm. I made a little mistake.
Right. And that's the difference between a leader who is, I don't even know what to say, authentic, and a leader who is like humanizes their experience, and they say like, okay, my bad, they adapt. But a lot of times these insecure people who are put in leadership positions, I don't call them leaders because they're not, they're put in these leadership positions. And if you have those qualities, insecure, immature, incompetent, like you said before, they know deep down that they're incompetent. I look at all these cabinet position people, right? Like I look at with the White House. All these people probably know deep down they're incompetent, but they are overcompensating because they don't want you to know that they are incompetent, but they know.
They know.
Yeah. They know. Yes. And something else I was thinking about when you talked about you and the other was that a Black woman who was at the other job who who they like dismissed or whatever. So what I heard, and through my own research too, was I think Jenny Clark did a video and she talked about that often the star performers are more likely to experience workplace bullying. I was like, wow, amazing, right? And Dr. Ramani, I think, was talking about narcissistic behaviors. And she said that those who exhibit narcissistic qualities are more likely to go into leadership positions. Can you talk about that too?
With I think this sounds silly, my answer perhaps, but I think about, the comics with superheroes.
Uh-huh.
If you think about some of these superheroes, they're reluctant superheroes. They got to be teased into it. They really don't want to be out front. I mean, look at Clark Kent. He just was cool being in the cut.
Right.
But somebody who wants power, that's the leader I'm afraid of.
True.
There are some people, it's a natural progression in their career, or they feel that they can make change. I'm in higher education for the students and the faculty and the staff that they serve. And if that's their motivation, that's lovely. Mm-hmm. But if they're motivated because they want the big name on the door and they want to have the power, that's the leader I'm afraid of. True. So a narcissistic personality who's really all about themselves and the self-aggrandizing, and they need the constant praise. Sometimes those people seek leadership positions and they're savvy. But to sustain them, you got to keep kissing their feet and telling them how great they are. And they just drain the lifeblood out of you. And then they turn around to suck your energy out like a little vampire, right?
Yes.
So as opposed to other leaders, servant style leaders who have humility and empathy.
Yes, that's humility. Yes.
You can say, oh, wow, I understand your best friend died. And even though the best friend isn't on the bereavement list, I can give you 2 days.
Right.
We'll find a way to make it up.
Yeah.
That's empathy. That's care. I understand that your mom has this. Happened to me. The same boss, the one who says, I made the mistake and I was mortified and they were okay. My mom had eye surgery the first week of school. I don't know why she picks the first week of school to do surgery because she's done it 3 times.
Okay.
And you know what my boss says? That's your mama. You got to go. We'll pick up the slack. That's your mother.
Wow.
Other places I've been at where they said, oh, you were at a funeral? I need the link to the bereavement in the obituary. And I was like,
What?
and actually had the staff tracking down, was I really at a funeral? Yeah, that's the kind of knucklehead.
That's tasteless.
And that person,
Ooh.
a straight bully. Yeah.
Ooh, that's
So
horrible.
you see the difference. There's two different times. I got a family emergency. One is like, I understand, I support you. I know I'm going to get my work out of you anyway. Go do your thing.
Yeah.
And the other one who's trying to crush you in the moment.
Right. Which is so stupid, because a true leader recognizes if I show compassion towards people, they're more loyal. They want to do a better job. They feel, supported.
Yeah.
That's a smart person. But the insecure person who exhibits a narcissist, they only care about themselves.
Right.
It's all about that sense of power and control. And I just think about the bully that I had at the former job, social worker. She was a licensed social worker. And my mother-in-law was gravely ill. Oh. And no, this is when she actually passed away. She put at the bottom of an email, a group email, tell Kamani condolences to her about the loss of her mother-in-law. The bottom of an email. So she never even contacted me directly. And she put at the bottom of an email for people to follow up with me to express condolences. This is a social worker, right? So again, the narcissistic person, they don't really care. The other part, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I feel like you just kind of touch upon too. When you have people who exhibit these narcissistic qualities, they also have these sociopathic qualities too, where they can be very charming to other people, but a terror to people that they're so-called supervising. And they're like predators, all right? So they're able to identify those people who are also insecure in the workplace who want power. Yes. And they seek those people out, and then they form these cliques in the workplace.
One of the ways mobbing forms is you collect other insecure people. And I wrote a paper on it. It's called Higher Ed Henchmen. Ooh. With the henchmen, you have the boss, and then they have the little cronies who go out and do their bidding. Ooh. Well, I associated mobbing with there's a head bully, but then they have their little minions who go and they do it so they get favored. They get the raise. Yes. They get more flex time. They can take longer lunches, and the boss gives them all this latitude because the boss can turn to you and make you the bully.
Yes.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're like, oh, I had nothing to do with it, because they're the puppet master. So they have the minions do the dirty work, and now they have something on the minion, and then the minion is indebted to the bully, not the organization.
Yeah.
Hot mess. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So you talked about, when I said, well, what are the things that Black women can do if they recognize they're experiencing workplace bullying or workplace mobbing? You said tell people, which is very important, because number one, we don't want to feel like we're alone or like, am I crazy? Is this, so that's very important. You also mentioned about telling colleagues, with the knowing that some of our colleagues will support us and some will not because they are fearful. Right. But also knowing that when we speak out in the workplace, there's a cost to that as well. There's a cost. Yeah. So many times if we speak up, we got the target on our back, right? So they kind of come for us even more. So I know that when we previously talked, you talked about, I think only Puerto Rico has something on the books about workplace bullying. Right. So how, like, knowing that, what advice can you give to Black women where they're in the workplace? Maybe they've told a supervisor or about the mob, they've told a supervisor, or maybe the supervisor is the one doing it. What are the recourses she have in that situation?
Sometimes an organization has its own policies or has its own mission. Like here at Penn State, we have respect and integrity and what have you. So we don't have an anti-bullying policy, but we have these values.
Okay.
And they mean it. So assess your environment.
Okay.
Are there policies that prohibit bullying at your institution? Do they really believe their mission statement? Because mission statements, they can be window dressing or they could really mean it.
True.
And also consider how they've treated other complaints. If other people have complained and they got some relief, maybe you can expect some kind of relief if you complain. But if you've seen other people complain and they didn't get relief or got even worse, well, that's telling you maybe you need to transfer inside the university. maybe you need to start looking for another job. Maybe you just keep your nose down and do your work until your child finishes school or whatever benefits that you need. Be very deliberate about how you move and also take care of yourself. What I mean
Yes.
by that is whether you exercise or whether you, I love virtual reality. I need to exercise anyway, but I did much more of it before because it just took me away. Plan vacations or trips with your family or a night out or even a night in, sit on your deck or the front porch or wherever and just appreciate the sky. Think about the things that you are grateful for. Think about the things that bring you joy. I don't know, maybe your grandbaby's party, or maybe, when your mom was released from the hospital and everybody was real happy, or go back to those things that make you smile and cherish those things. And that can help out as well. The other thing, which I've also noticed, is I don't know a sister yet who does not have a counselor. Find a culturally competent counselor. If you got to go through 2 or 3 of them to find that person, that's okay, because all counselors aren't for all people.
No.
But having somebody who is grounded and listen to you from your racialized feminist space, because all counselors don't get it.
No,
they don't. And find folks who you can talk with or talk through things and get it done. And then say, hey, girl, you already won. You just have to wait for so-and-so to retire. Hey, you already did this, just get your office moved across campus. You know what? You're going to be fine, because isn't your son about to graduate? You can move. Your counselor can help you refocus or redirect that anxiety to some really cool things instead.
Yeah. So yeah, I just want to, yes, I definitely agree with that as a Black woman therapist. Okay. I absolutely agree with what you said. So everybody, in the description section, I do have a video about how to find a therapist, because it's a process. So I have that in the description section. I also have a description section on YouTube about different mental health resources for you. Okay. Now, something I want to say about therapy too that's so important is that you have an objective person who's able to reality test with you about what's happening, because you are probably being gaslit and all other kind of stuff at the job, and the dangers that you might start self-gaslighting yourself. So a therapist will be able to, no, that's that place. It's not you. The other thing is that a good therapist is able to help you come up with short-term coping mechanisms, right? Short-term, not long-term, because you're not dealing with the source of the problem, but it can help you come with a short-term strategy. But the hope is that you do recognize and you're starting to exit plan too. So you might need to get a coach or other resources that are available. And I love what you said, that sometimes you might have to go through a series of therapists to find that right connection. Don't give up on therapy, okay? But you need to be proactive in really finding someone who really connects with you. It's very important. So as we're thinking about maybe like legal recourse, because I hear a lot of Black women, even to my videos, they'll say, why didn't you file a lawsuit? You should have filed a lawsuit. You had you could have did it, right? And I always say, first of all, filing a lawsuit is a personal decision. Second, filing a lawsuit is not easy, because I was in a lawsuit where we sued my son's previous school. That took 5 years, okay? Yep. So I was in the middle. I was dealing with that. I was in that lawsuit, and then all the stuff the job had. I did not have the capacity to be in 2 different lawsuits, okay? So if people want to file a lawsuit, I fully support them in doing so, okay? And I also recognize it's a personal choice that some people don't want to file a lawsuit. So what could you say to people who are thinking about maybe taking legal action? What words of wisdom can you offer to them?
First question, and a good lawyer will tell you this, whether it's a divorce, whether it's employment, whether it's environmental. Have you tried everything else? There is nothing sexy about a lawsuit.
It's not. It is so stressful.
It can eat you alive. All the prep with attorneys, depositions, the discovery.
And it's messy and dirty. Yes.
It's messy, dirty, and horribly expensive.
Yes.
So the first thing is really think, do you want to do this? Is there another way out? Or do you really have your back against the wall where you can't? Or maybe the issue is so critical, you have to. It could be something that happened. Maybe it was a hate crime that it was allowed to happen in your office or whatever, but really have a come to Jesus conversation with you and your family. And also, what can you afford?
Yeah.
Great if you can get an attorney on contingency. That means they believe
That's what I did.
If you can't get somebody on contingency,
yes,
you need to think about that.
True.
And then when you talk with your attorney, come up with a plan. Meaning, how long do you expect to be in this? Are you in a red state or a blue state? Are you in a state where the trial judge and the district court, that they look favorably on the issue that you're going after? Are you just mad and you want to punish somebody, which if you have the money to do that, sure, you could behave like 47 does. Or you find another way to do it. Is there mediation? Can you file with the EEOC or your state level human relations group, the Department of Justice, even though right now, I don't know about that, Department of Labor. There are also agencies that can help you. That's something I typically say to people, and I just need to put a little asterisk. This is something I could have said up until 2024. With all this stuff changing in the government and people being laid off, I don't know what the effectiveness is of these agencies. And that's no shade to them, just like so many people being laid off.
Yeah.
But be very clear about your charge.
Yeah.
You're charging what?
Yeah.
You're charging that you were discriminated against because you're associated with a child who has special needs and they didn't accommodate you? Are you charging that you were being paid unfairly? Are you charging that they retaliated against you after you took pregnancy leave? I mean, be very, very clear. And when it's time to approach an attorney, attorneys love timelines.
And documentation. They love it. Yes.
So if you can come through with, on such and such a date I was hired, and such a date this other person was hired, on such and such a date the second boss did X, Y, and D, on such and such a date this was my response, and you have the emails. But if you go in like blabbing like you do with your girlfriend on the phone, the attorney's like, I can't follow this. They won't take the case.
Right.
Timelines are critical.
Yes.
Because they're also looking for retaliation. So if you engage in a protected activity in May, but then by July something bad happened, okay, that looks like retaliation possibly. If you just run in your mouth because you're upset, attorney can't follow that. They want timelines. They want data. They want proof. They want the emails. They also want to know who of your colleagues potentially can support your case.
That's true.
That's not now, and also keep in mind, sometimes you'll have 5 people say, yeah, Leah, I'll support you. And then the attorney comes calling that 5 people, goes down to 1.
Wow.
Don't be mad at them. This gets into the same thing about if somebody wants to be involved in a lawsuit. You give them grace. But if you have critical information, some attorneys tell me, documents don't lie. You have emails, if you have documents, if you have salary ranges, if you have policies and they give you something else that was broken, whatever, you want to bring that in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And every attorney should give you about 30 to 45 minutes initial free consultation. So when you go in there, you're trying to get an attorney, and to go on contingent, you want to be very clear. The timeline, what happened, what's the charge, who witnessed it, what do you want?
Yeah, I agree. Contingency. Please do that. Okay. I did that. I can imagine how much it would have cost if we had to do out of pocket. So just be mindful with legal action. You might be mad and hot and you want to, all these other things, but you need to make a wise decision to not get yourself into a financial hole with paying an attorney out of pocket. Just be mindful of that. Okay. So Dr. Leah, if there's a Black woman who's experienced workplace mobbing or workplace bullying, and I generally say the healing from that generally happens once you leave, because if you're still there, you can't really heal from it. But let's say her confidence is shot because of what she's gone through. What would you think would be helpful for her if her self-confidence is shot after experiencing workplace mobbing or bullying?
First, forgive yourself for whatever has happened to your body, whether
Mm-hmm.
you gained weight or lost weight, whether you now have a nervous twitch or not, or your hair fell out. I mean, these are things that happen to people when they're under stress. Forgive yourself for what might have happened to your body.
Yes.
Certainly speak with your doctors about what are some healthy corrections you can make. They may say, oh, you should walk 40 minutes every day. Or they may say, you know what, you got to cut out the smoking. They may say you can have 1 glass of wine a week. Go to your doctor or medical nutritionist to find out how to get your physical back together.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the things that used to bring you joy, whether it is you like going to the beach, or you like, balloons, or you just like sitting in the back listening to the birds chirp. Get
Uh-huh.
back into the things that you like.
Yeah.
Let your family know you're healing. You let them know this is kind of what I need from you. And it's also okay to bring your spouse, your partner, your mom, whoever, to your counseling appointment so your
Absolutely.
counselor can share with them, well, this is what Leah's going through, and she's going to need a little extra time and your support
Mhm.
so they can hear it from the professional.
True.
Other things to heal is, I'm not saying forgive yourself because you did something wrong, but forgive yourself because we're so good at blaming ourselves that I got into the situation. It's my fault. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Give yourself some grace,
Yes.
give yourself some peace of mind, and get back into the activities you really enjoy.
Yeah.
Not drinking while the TV's going, you're binge watching whatever on Netflix. I'm not
Right.
saying binge watching Netflix is wrong. I'm saying drinking while you're doing it is probably something you need to back off of. Try to find something. There's probably something you just wanted to do, but you were too busy being bullied.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to
True.
go to that jazz festival, or maybe, your favorite play or whatever is coming to town, or whatever. Go
Yes.
enjoy it.
Yes. Yes. And the part about forgiving yourself is so important. And that's, I've left that job over 2.5 years ago, and I'm still practicing self-forgiveness because I'll have a memory about what happened. And I'm like, I can't believe I let them talk to me like that. I can't believe I did it. Why not? And I said, pause. Okay. I made the best decision at that moment, given what I was going through. And so the self-forgiveness is an ongoing process. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So, Dr. Leah, when we think about all the things that you do, because you sounds like you do so many wonderful things, you're an expert in this area, and you've talked to us and you shared so much information with us about different things for us to think about, the awareness of what it is, how the systems that we're in really contribute to these toxic work environments. Can you share with the audience a few things? What does your life look like now? And what words of wisdom can you offer to a Black woman who might be experiencing workplace bullying or mobbing right now?
Well, my life is crazy, but in another way.
Okay.
In that sense, my mother had some health issues, but I was able, in my new job, I was given the grace to pay attention to her. She had like 2 surgeries last year.
Oh,
She's in her late 80s. She's doing great.
good. Okay.
I'm very appreciative that I had the time to do that.
Yes.
This job required me to get an apartment closer to Penn State, so I don't see my husband as much. That part is tougher, but I really enjoy my colleagues. I enjoy being able to speak about workplace bullying. And what's interesting is, from this position, so I do have folks across the Big Ten who will ask me to speak on this issue, or folks across Penn State who will ask me to speak on this issue, because it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
I also, and I'm tenured too as a full professor.
Awesome.
So in that regard, I feel a little more security because I am tenured as a full
Yeah.
professor. And so what would my advice be? It can get better. I recall a study I did, it was like 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And a woman had said, I was in a graduate program and I almost took my life.
Woo.
I managed to graduate and I got another job. And
Wow.
I learned, oh my God, I could have lost my career and my life.
Wow.
I just needed to get to the other side.
Yes.
So what I'll also say is I recognize with bullying, especially if you're being mobbed, like several people and your colleagues have fallen back from you and you don't have a lot of support, at that stage, I'd be like, get yourself out, because your brain, that's what suicide's about. You're looking for an
Yeah.
escape, and that's
Yeah.
the pathway you see. There's another pathway.
Yes.
And it can get better.
Yes. Yes.
That's why I say tell people it's okay. There is no shame in leaving a toxic and none whatsoever.
No, you're not proving anything to anybody by staying.
And it's okay. And you'll see that your relationships with your family and your friends will improve.
Mm-hmm.
Was I really snarky at the height of it? Oh, anything would set me off.
Mm.
And my husband was really supportive. And there was one, we went on somewhere, graduation. His nephew graduated. I was such a bear on that trip. And I remember thinking, Leah, you got to do something about this.
Wow.
And I apologized to him. And I said, I'm going to double up on my counseling. I'm going to, and I actually did a staycation, no news, no writing, nothing that's going to overstimulate me, do some more meditation and just get this toxicity out of me, which is what I needed to go on and do the job search, which landed me here. So it can get better.
Yeah.
Ask your counselor how to help you through it. Ask your family how to get through it. But it seems really bleak at the time, but you can get through it. I was bullied easily. 2016 to 2023.
What? Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Woo, that's a long time. That's a long time. And I had so frustrated. You're so brilliant, right? And you study bullying, and then
you ironic. The bullying expert gets bullied.
Right.
I have a really dear colleague of mine who's with me the whole way. We're still buddies now. My husband was really supportive. Once my mom figured it out, because my mom at first was like, oh no, that's not that bad. And about 6 months into it, she was like, I've never seen anything. And she was in higher education too. I've never seen anything like this.
Wow.
And so I got the support, and it was tough.
Yeah.
But all that time, and there was stuff they were doing before 2016. I just took it on the chin. I got overloaded classes, took my travel money. I would work through that stuff. But when it really hit, and I'm very appreciative. The other thing I will say is, I'm not trying to be evangelistic. If you have a spiritual practice, there are studies out there about when Black folks reconnect spiritually. I don't care what religion it is, or just being in nature or what have you. There's something about being spiritually connected, whether you believe in speaking with your ancestors, or you take mass, or you go to the mosque or the synagogue. It doesn't matter. A spiritual connection can help you see that you're being prepared for something, even though it's whooping your butt right now. It's preparing you for something later, and a connection to some type of spiritual practice can be very helpful, no matter which pathway to spirituality you're using.
Yeah. I want to speak on that just a little bit, because when I was at the toxic job, I've always been a very spiritual person. When I was at the toxic job, I started questioning my spirituality, because I couldn't understand, again, logically and spiritually, I couldn't understand why was I being traumatized and terrorized if I'm such a good person, I'm such a good employee, I'm so dedicated. So why was this happening to me? And my phenomenal Black woman therapist said, this is happening to you because God is telling you that that place is no longer for you, that you deserve to be somewhere bigger and better. He's preparing you. He's elevating you to something bigger. And this is God's rescue mission for you, right? Now, I didn't see, you know what I'm saying? I'm all like trying to fight, but I believe that that's true, right? Because again, I never would have had a YouTube channel. Never, ever. Wouldn't be doing all this stuff if this never happened to me. So yes, God was putting me in a different position. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at the time. I was questioning at the time, but now I see it. Now I know that. And the other thing, Dr. Hollis, I remember you and I having really an emergency live after the death of Dr. Antoinette Candia Bailey. And we talked about her experiences and how heartbreaking that was But I'm so glad we talked about it can go that far. It can go that far where you're in that tunnel vision of such depression that you don't see a way out. And then taking your life seems like that's the only way out. And interestingly, I interviewed her very close friend, her line sister, and she was sharing the whole like, Dr. Bonnie did this, like she chronicled everything that happened to her because she wanted people to know what her story was and what contributed to what happened. And something that her friend shared was a quote from Dr. Bonnie was, when you recognize that your environment is toxic in the workplace, go, leave, do not stay. It does not get better. And so I hope that we as Black women particularly can really listen to what she is warning for us and what we're saying also. So Dr. Hollis and I are saying this, but we're also showing you by example that life is so much better after you leave a toxic situation. Yes. So Dr. Hollis, can you share with the people, everybody watching, what is the work that you're doing now? How can they access all of your research and also about your consulting?
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm actually working on a book now. I had interviewed 25 women, Black women educators, ages 70 to 90, who were in their careers before Title VII and well into, people didn't take Title VII seriously until the late 70s anyway. So those civil rights laws, how did they go through their careers? How did they thrive in spite of not having the legal support that's still in place, even though we got 47 in place? So we still have those 1964 laws. We still have unequal pay laws. We still have pregnancy discrimination laws and ADA laws. But I interviewed a group of women who were operating before those laws were in place to see what lessons we can use now. So that's my current project.
When is that coming out?
I'm on chapter 2.
Okay.
I'm hoping to have a full manuscript by the end of the year. So hopefully next year.
Okay.
But I'm learning a lot. Just
I want you to come back. I want you to come back and tell us.
I will come back. I will come back.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, how to get in touch with me is abullyatwork.com. Even if you Google Patricia Berkeley, which is the title there, I have my own website. You can certainly reach me there. And I do things, whether it's dealing with workplace bullying, teamwork. Yes, I use diversity, even though it's a dirty word now. And really just how do we have, that's it, how to have a healthy workplace. So I have an email, it's equity1@patriciaberkeley.com. And perhaps the easiest way to find me, these state institutions, you're so discoverable. Leah Hollis, Penn State, my profile come up, my email will come up. And if I need to take the conversation over to my consulting, then I certainly will. But I'm pretty easy to find. And I do field questions from time to time. I've had people call me out of the blue and say, hey, can you tell me something? And I could probably give you 15, 20 minutes once in a while. So I don't think anybody should be beat up at work, felt like they're nothing just because you're trying to earn a living. And I'm really dedicated to that cause. Is like, we got to get this right. Yeah. We have to treat each other better.
True.
And some organizations got it right, and some organizations are still in progress.
And they got to be put on notice. Absolutely. So we're going to read the community chat and we're going to wind down. Hello, Marissa. I see you here. Thank you for joining. These videos are saving lives and are needed. Thank you. Okay. Great information on bullying. Talk about sacrificial. Yes. Okay. There were some questions that came in. Oh, love this. Forgive yourself. How long does it take to heal from a toxic environment? I've been in a few and I'm finally on a leave of absence now. Sis, I took a leave of absence while I was at the job and then I ended up exit planning and I left. I resigned. The healing, I'm still healing. So I don't think any of us can say how long it takes. It's an ongoing process. It is so much better for me now, 2.5 years out, but I'm still healing. There might be things that remind me of the job. So give yourself grace. I hope that you are in therapy to allow yourself to go through that process, or you're a part of this community. And hopefully this, watching my YouTube videos and other resources that I have available can help you with that healing process. I do have resource in the description section. So check out the resources that I have that talk about healing from a toxic job. So it's an ongoing process. So we can't tell you how long, unfortunately. I feel that most targets, what's challenging is that you've accomplished a dream and then nonsensical claims arise, yet you're doing your job, outperforming peers, metrics are solid. Yes, this is an example of what we talked about before. It does not make logical sense. It does not. And in fact, if you are doing very well at your job, you might be even more of a target. Okay. It doesn't make sense. But once you realize it's happening, the importance of taking care of yourself, therapy, and start exit planning to get out of that environment. Okay. Also, do you have any tips about healing from toxic environments with people who look like you? Yeah, so all skin folk and kinfolk, we've talked about that before. Even with Dr. Hollis, we talked about that before. So I have a lot of videos about that, okay? The healing, again, really is in your therapy. It's talking about the betrayal of what happens when people look like us, because there's a whole nother layer of pain when the people look like us, okay? Yes, prayer help me. Would you ladies, wait, I don't, into ladies, oh, you will go into the ladies' room at work and pray. Good. Okay. At that time, it was a comfort. And now also have to deal with bullying. Had a position a few months ago, woman bullying, I left. Good. I'm glad you left, sis. I'm glad you left. Yet your insubordinate is flagrantly incompetent, yet doesn't seem to have any pushback. Only later did I learn about the work of the right person is taken as fact, irrespective of the education level. Yeah, when you see there's nonsense going in the workplace, you kind of bringing it out and challenge meetings that more than likely it's not going to change. Okay, so be aware of it and start pivoting out. What would you say about that, Dr. Hollis?
If you see that other people are having the same problem and they're struggling as well, that's telling you the organization's temperament for those shenanigans, and plan accordingly.
Yes, so true. Protect yourself, okay?
Mm.
And white women here still kill, so true. But the laws intentionally loophole for discrimination to exist. Yes, yes, that's the issue we talked about in terms of some. I think only Puerto Rico has like really strict
A really
rules.
strong policy, yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of them don't. So again, is it in your best interest to go the legal route, or is it in your best interest to pivot out and start preparing how to get out? Okay. I'm struggling, as Dr. Kamani mentioned, also have been in a healing profession and doing it while only to be abused is such a paradox. It is. It is. Again, I've mentioned before that my workplace bully was a social worker. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what their it happens across professions. Dr. Hollis, higher education, across professions. Okay. I've been the victim of workplace mobbing in so many places. I'm a quiet, introverted Black woman who does my job well and have been punished for doing so. They're white, non-Black, and Black. Yeah. Who gatekeep. Yes. And try to push me out. They gossip stalk me into the women's washroom. They're bitter, miserable, malicious. They are, know that. And also know that you need to make a plan. Okay. You don't need to announce it, but you need to plan. Mine was my ignorance of the rules of whiteness described in White Fragility. The intercultural betrayal trauma is unbelievable, especially when you hire with them. Yes. And that is processing the pain of that. Okay. Process the pain of that so you can now be mobilized to take action for yourself and know you have agency. You don't have to stay there. Okay. You see the writing on the wall. Don't ignore the writing on the wall. Okay. But just start planning and take care of yourself. So, Dr. Hollis, we're about to close. Any last words you want to say to everyone?
It's not your fault. Take care of yourself. Rely on your family and your community, because it will get better. You might have to, and you're being prepared for something.
Yes. Yeah. You may not know what you're being prepared for, but you're preparing for something bigger and better. Look at me. Look at Dr. Hollis. I'm telling you the truth. Okay. Last comment. Yes. Making plan and praying to come out of the demon's den. Yes. And check out the resources that I have available for you. I have many resources available for you. You're not out here alone. Okay. So I don't want you to feel like you're alone. I don't want you to feel like you're stuck. You have I promise. Last one. One of the many underhanded things that I learned was the organization was offering promotions and hiring new employees with a higher pay, but did not tell senior employees. The plan was exposed. Many left. Good. I'm glad it was revealed. Okay. So everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. So it helps with the algorithm. So it's suggested to other Black women who might be in similar situations. Also subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you haven't already, turn the notification bell when you know, so you know I'm going live. And please share this video with at least 2 other Black women. Okay. So I want to say publicly, thank you again, Dr. Hollis. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. And again, share this video with other Black women. And I will see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.
Great day. Bye-bye.